And we're back with Trudy's trade tips. I learned my lesson. We're back with you.
TTT.
TTT, yeah. You left us there with a really good tip there on XWorks and why you should reconsider using XWorks for the Incoterms, Trudy, last time. But you did say you had two red flag type Incoterms that you wanted to make people aware of. Where are we picking up now?
So the opposite of XWorks is the other end of the spectrum, which is DDP, delivered duties paid. And again, that's one of my favorite ones. That it sounds great. If I'm a buyer, I don't have to do anything. I just sit there and everything comes to me. But again, whatever sounds too good to be true typically is too good to be true. And DDP is the other end of that spectrum. So when we think, oh, let me spell that out. DDP, delivered duty paid. So when we're looking at a DDP transaction, if I'm in the selling role, I'm responsible for all cost, all risk, all responsibility from my door all the way to the customer's door. So if I'm in the selling role, that's kind of like, oh, do I really want to do this? Okay. And now I'm going to be responsible for the import requirements going into the destination country. And to be honest, guys, some countries you cannot have a DDP transaction. They don't allow foreign entities to do a DDP transaction. So unless you have a subsidiary in that destination country, you will not be able to do a DDP transaction anyway, right? But even apart from that, if I'm in the selling role, let's say I can do delivered duties pay into another country. Again, I'm taking on all that cost, all risk, all responsibility. And do I really want to be responsible for navigating the import rules and regulations in that destination country? Usually not. I prefer not. Okay. So one of the things is our salespeople love to sell DDP because we're all about customer service and making things better for the customer. And in one sense, that's great, except when it gets to DDP. Okay, so DDP is where I draw the line. So let's pick another Incoterm. Now, if I'm dealing with like a warranty repair kind of scenario and it's relatively small, still kind of queasy about it, but I will allow it. Okay, but as long as we have all our ducks in a row and we know exactly what we're getting into and we're covering all our bases. So that's on the selling side. But what if I'm in the buying side? What about DDP, Trudy? Sounds like a great option. Well, maybe, maybe not. And usually not, right? Why is that? Because I am depending as a U.S. importer or whoever the import of record is in the destination country, I am depending on my supplier to be aware of and knowledgeable about all of the import requirements coming into my country. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's great. I don't have to do anything. I just have to sit back and let them do what they're supposed to do. But you have to remember that you're still tied to that transaction, right? Let's even break this down to a US import transaction. There on the import side, there are two parties that have to be listed within the entry. Who's the importer of record and who's what's called the ultimate consignee, which is the company that the goods are going to be delivered to. So you might think, oh, I'm good. It's only going to be delivered to me because I'm only listed as the ultimate consignee. My supplier is the importer of record. But what if your supplier, we've seen over the years where suppliers get very creative. That's the term I like to use, right? Very creative in the value that they report, very creative in the classifications that they use trying to circumvent the requirements for that particular product. But guess what? You're still on the hook because you're still party to that transaction. So you want to ensure that you try to stay away from that as much as you possibly can. Because guess what? You're going to be closer to U.S. Customs than that supplier, right? So Customs might come back to you. And as long as you're able to show them the documentation you are the ultimate consignee, you may or may not get off the hook. So you don't want to really put yourself in that situation. You want to avoid that as much as possible. But let me step back even one step further. We have seen over the years in many scenarios where your foreign supplier does not have their own customs broker and they don't have a power of attorney with the customs broker and they're not officially set up with U.S. Customs as the importer of record. And so what essentially happens, you may have a broker that since they have your name in their system and they know the goods are going to you, they're like, oh, I clear for them all the time. I'll just clear the shipment in their name. All the charges will go back to their supplier. What's the big deal? The big deal is now you have an entry in your name that you were not prepared for, or you didn't even know, and you might not even have that documentation. So, either way, not a big fan of DDP, delivered duty paid, whether I'm in the selling role or in the buying role. So, you just want to be cautious about that. And especially with the tariffs, a lot of our suppliers are like, we'll take it on, we'll take care of it. And you're thinking it's going to be a good thing, but in a lot of cases, it's not such a good thing. So we definitely want to make sure you guys are aware and alert about that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is that sometimes um, we forget that, there's all these I guess people might actually say, yeah, what the heck, do it DDP if you're the customer, right? Because you're like, I don't want to even deal with those tariffs, etc. And all of a sudden you're on the line for that, when it actually clears, right? I mean, you still need to be paying for those tariffs if they took a shortcut.
If they took a shortcut, it still falls in your lap.
Right.
And we want to avoid that as much as possible. So one of the things we do recommend is if you are going down the path of a DDP transaction, especially in light of a U.S. import transaction, again, we don't recommend it. But if you are going down that path, one of many things that we recommend is try to sort of stay in the loop, meaning have visibility of that documentation that the supplier is going to be using for that customs entry, that commercial invoice, any of the supporting documentation, have visibility of that information, and then get some kind of visibility of the data entry, the data elements, I should say, that were entered for the import of that particular product, just to make sure that they did use the right classification. And if all the additional tariffs that are due, that they did claim that. If there's anti-dumping or countervailing duties due on that item, that they did pay those and satisfy all those requirements. Because again, you don't want to be left holding the bag long after the fact, right? Because customs does look at those entries like they do every entry. They look at them, they review them to ensure that all of the data elements are correct. And they will come back to you and they will say, hey, you are a part of the transaction. These goods were actually delivered to you. What's going on here? Give us some information. And ever since 2025 and moving forward, customs is big on enforcement, right? Because things have changed. Our life has changed. The world is different. And so they've always been big on enforcement. So that's what I like to tell people. They've always been big on enforcement, but it's even more focused, more targeted enforcement now with all the tariffs and all of the additional requirements for our import transactions. So we can't be too careful. So that's why we recommend try to stay away from DDP, deliver duty paid, as much as you possibly can.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but you also talked about um, shipping into the United States, but this totally applies to almost any other country. Well, for
Absolutely.
one, like you said, some countries don't even allow it, right?
So
And yeah, and here in the U.S. we don't have a VAT, the value added tax, but
that
a bunch of other countries do, and they collect that during the import process. Correct?
correct, they
Well, not
do.
everybody, but a lot of them do.
They do. And in many scenarios, there is some kind of refund. In many countries, I should say, there's some kind
That's
of
what I was
refund.
getting.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I
yeah.
was gonna get at. Yes.
And you have to ensure that you're registered correctly to get that refund. So that's where we can take this discussion one step further and talk about who is your service provider and what are their capabilities in that country. Because not every when I talk about your service provider, who's a freight forwarder and the ultimate customs broker in that destination country, because I like to tell people I might have a freight forwarder that does a phenomenal job, let's say in Europe, but if I'm sending something to India and they don't have the same representation down there, and when they get to India, they might have a little bit of a challenge. So you really have to work with your freight forwarders, your service providers, your brokers, ensure that they do have that representation down there in order to accurately and effectively provide services for you on that import transaction going into that destination country to file everything correctly.
Yep. Exactly. So, wow. Okay. Well, now we got first episode. You talked about X Works, so
Correct.
let's scratch that one off. I mean, you don't have to, of course, but if you want to be logical and practical, you may want to consider to not even like you don't even know what EXW means. And now DDP. So now, so we eliminated the 4 dump and pump unless you really are an oil or grain and all that. So let's assume a big majority of the world is not that. So those 4 are gone. 4, 5, 6. 6 are gone. We're left with 5.
5. Yep. So you can concentrate on you can focus on the remaining 5 terms. That's FCA free carry at, CPT carriage paid to, CIP carriage and insurance paid, DAP delivered at place. And I'm actually going to make that 4, Lalo.
Oh,
I'm
are
going to
you?
say,
Uh-oh.
DPU delivered at place unloaded is kind of in its own little world. And there are very few scenarios that we would probably use DPU. So we're really down to 4. Okay.
Wow.
So I would use DPU delivered at place unloaded if I have, usually like in special projects is where you might find that happening quite often. But for most of us, we don't really do that. So we're really down to 4.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
4.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yep.
cut down my odds by or my usage by more than 50%. So that's
I know. I'm trying to look, trade compliance is complicated enough. I'm trying to simplify it everywhere I possibly can to
awesome.
make life easier.
Well,
Yeah. So
well, that was great.
if we concentrate on those 4, we're good. We're good. Make sure
Exactly.
everybody in the selling role, in the buying role, everybody in your organization understand those 4 and use them correctly. You're in good shape.
Okay, great. So fun fact, just because Trudy just told you cut it down to those 4, you don't just go crazy and use them. Okay, you need to actually, and shameless plug, you do need to come to our class. It's only a half a day, but you come to our class to learn exactly how to use those, not just say, oh, look, this sounds good, let's use this one. I mean,
Yes.
again, shameless plug, but please do come and look us up. But that's what we like to just go through. We could actually go through some case studies and scenarios and stuff like
Yes.
that during the class, and why you should or shouldn't do that, or what happens if you load it here, the truck breaks down, or there's a storm and it leaks.
Equipment failure.
Yeah, exactly. All kinds of stuff. So we do go through all those different ideas. Plus, you get to ask as many questions as you want. Where else are you going to get a consultant / instructor? Although they're not providing consulting, but they are providing that wisdom and knowledge that they have.
And guidance.
In guidance, yeah, exactly.
That's Custom's favorite word. Now it's ours. Guidance.
They do like to use that, don't they?
Yeah. Yes, they do.
Well, Trudy, thank you so much. These last 2 tips were great. We hope everybody hangs on because we're going to have a few more coming up in the next couple of weeks. And not about Incoterms, but a few other topics that obviously, like I said, that Trudy teaches. But Trudy, thank you again for doing this.
Thank you, Lalo. Like I said, it's always fun to hang out with you guys.
Alrighty, have a good one, everyone.